to another training session on Waltz. This session is really going to be considered as an introductory session, just so people have a bit more insight to how Waltz works, what sort of information it can contain, and how it can be used across an organisation. Obviously, the application can be used slightly differently, with slightly different naming conventions across different organisations. However, this is to be considered a very much an overview. So first things first, you're looking at the Waltz homepage. This is the home screen, which gives you a view immediately of any news that has been recently introduced, as well as highlights from the most recent releases. You will see, depending on your role, actions that you have pertaining to you, whether that be attestations or whether that be surveys. And again, you will see what can be considered application groups. There are other videos available which talk about application groups, how they work and how to build them out. They can be seen on the same YouTube channel. Okay, so let's just kick off. So I guess right from the top, you can see here we have different viewpoints that we have that are defaulted to viewpoints. So we have organization units, people, a data taxonomy, and also other viewpoints within the application. And the best way to find this is to look for an application and look at the lens there. So we'll search snail. Obviously this is demonstration information, and we can open the application. I guess one thing to point out is when you start typing in here, you'll start filtering the results for different elements of data. So across your organization, you may see many different versions of snail within application groups or organization units, and obviously you'll start seeing those come through. What you do is you simply select the application that you're looking for. Okay, so this is the Waltz application main viewpoint. What this tries to give you is some core information about your application. It tries to give you information about your key people, if they've been defined, and again a number of assessments. These are obviously organisation specific, but they can give you views around whether your application has sanctions that may apply to it, whether you maybe have sensitive data, and essentially this can all be taken from external sources and rolled into your application lens, or it can be taken from data that's already within Waltz and within the Waltz database. What you'll see on the left-hand side is a number of different views of cutting the information. The first one is essentially your assessment ratings. So what you would generally use this for is some organisations will have a number of assessment ratings, and they will use this to try and look at further granular views of this information. By selecting one of these, again, you can have a little bit more information about what the assessment is, and then you'll see the rating that's been provided. In different organisations, some of these will be locked and some of these will be unlocked. You can see if an assessment rate is locked, if it has a key next to it. Attestations is the next piece I wanted to talk about. So this will be quite a high-level view, but attestations is really looking at essentially recertifications. So what we're looking here is from a logical flow perspective, which we'll go into more detail in a moment, and a physical flow perspective. We're trying to say, when was this information last attested? So when we start looking at logical flows, or the physical flow across the organization, across the application, we can start saying, when was the last time an accountable person said, this data is present and correct. So we can obviously have a semblance of understanding and agreement with what that information is. So again, that can help us across an organization if maybe justifying how fresh the information is. Maybe you would work internally with your audit functions. But again, it gives you, or obviously also externally, but it helps give the organisation and helps give the community of users an understanding of when was this information documented and essentially when was it last attested as yes, this information is present and correct. And data flows sit against logical flows and the physical flows, but there's also the ability within Waltz to put these attestations against your viewpoint ratings. I won't go into too much detail, but this would essentially allow you to look at your current viewpoints, and you would be able to have attestations. So there may be a need within your organisation to attest application to function mapping or to process, or it may even be region. Maybe you need to understand which applications are we confident and do we definitely know are mapped against the correct region. Again, this functionality gives you that opinion. And then again, more importantly, we have the history. So if an application has been attested, you'll see whether it's what type of attestation it is. So is it a data flow or is it a viewpoint? And when was it last done and by whom? Again, it gives that level of accountability, granularity, and a view that everyone knows who in the organisation or in your organisation said, this is complete. Bookmarks is very much almost like a self-help view, as I like to call it. It's really trying to look at more information, so you can sort of say, this is the help team for the application. This is the Jira site if you use something like Jira or Confluence or Jammer or something like that. This is our UAT environment. This is our open source environment. So you'll link maybe to if it's within FINOS or some of your FINOS documentation. So again, it starts giving you more flavour and more view on the application, and again maybe the support channel. So it's very much a view to provide more data and information around your application. Change initiatives is very much around essentially projects and programs where your application is impacted or is being used. Obviously, this can be useful across an organization because it can start helping you to understand which applications are being used for certain projects and programs. Obviously, from a program management perspective or a program manager perspective, it's not hugely useful if we're using a number of projects, a number of applications, which are being decommissioned in the next 6 months, and we are looking at a 4 or 5 year time horizon to deliver our program goals. So again, this really can be really useful, and obviously this can either be housed within Waltz, or it can be sourced from an external system. Depends on how your organisation treats this information. But again, it's really important to know, whether your application is being used in certain projects and programs, and if you are considering retiring your application or decommissioning your application, again, it means you can work with those project and program managers to either maybe extend the life of your application, or maybe ensure that they know where they might be able to source the same set of information from in the future. Waltz isn't a cost system, but it does have a lens on cost. So what we show here is an ability to be able to have some very, very high level cost information. Depending on your organisation, this will maybe offer different levels of granularity, but some organisations, obviously, as more of an architectural lens, just need that really high level view of how much the application is costing to run, and again, you can have also your historical data there as well. Again, there's a number of videos on data flow, so I won't jump into too much detail, but again, they're all available on the YouTube channel. But again, this is very much looking at your logical flows, or really looking at your point-to-point applications, and more imperatively your data type. So again, this really helps your organisation to understand not just what data is moving across the estate, which is obviously useful, but also lets you have that conversation, enrich the conversation with this is the application is sending data from A to B, but additional to that, we're also sending this type of information. And this can be really helpful to understand, okay, well, what across our organisation, what are we using these apps for? Is there duplication? Are we seeing things we don't know? Are far more apps sending interest rate data than we previously realised? Is that correct? What should we do about it? Again, it really starts to provide that level of questioning and understanding to sort of really start getting under the bonnet and understanding what that might mean. And again, if you're talking internally to your organisation, it provides a level of validation if you understand what data is moving across your estate, and it's not just data; it's data of book data, or maybe it's transaction information. Again, it kind of means that we can talk around the organisation and talk around what it is that we're delivering. So again, it's very useful. And then obviously the physical flow detail. Again, there are other videos on how this works and how you contribute to this. But again, it's very much around the real granular level view of information. So we can provide criticality of the physical flow. We can look at the basis offset. How old is that data? What's the description? We can have a look at the transport methodology. And again, it's that real granular level of view of information which can provide a lot of insight to the organisation. So again, really available in many on the other YouTube videos. And then lastly, again, I know David Watkins has done a video on this, but there is a lot of information we can provide around flow classification rules. So if your organisation has an authoritative source, maybe of which application should be sending or creating or that kind of thing, certain types of data, then this gives you the view to add additional flow classification rules. This is maybe looking at things like legacy data or legacy systems which still may be in your organisation, but it gives you that view of how we might use these. Again, David has got one of those. Has got a good video on this on the YouTube channel. Diagrams is very much around flow diagrams. So this allows you to build a point-to-point diagram which you can use for presentations and annotate them. And again, this is very much used in can be used essentially from all the data that's sourced on your logical and physical flow. So it's really bringing together all of that information and all that great knowledge, and allows you to really sort of show a wider, I guess, what a view of what it is that you're offering as part of the part of your diagram. Again, you have the option to be able to create PDFs from this, and use this as part of your presentations, maybe, or maybe share and send internally to your team or part of your organisation. Indicators is really a sort of a high-level indicator, and this is really just trying to look at data within Waltz, typically, and it's trying to say these are the sort of maybe KPIs or indicators that we care about as an organisation. We have the ability to be able to look at them from the application lens. Obviously, you need to define these yourself for your organisation, what makes sense to your organisation. But it also lets you roll these all up to different org units or different people. And again, it can start becoming far more powerful. So obviously, it's really interesting to understand now. Maybe you're non-compliant for SDLC technology, but when you go further up the organisation or further up the hierarchy to understand the wider picture, again, that can be far more powerful. People, again, this is very much around which people are defined essentially are using this application. So this is typically people such as maybe developers, business analysts, project and program managers. Obviously, your organisation may have different roles that are pertinent to the organisation and maybe around application ownership. And this is where you will find these people. Obviously, you can source these directly from the system of record in your firm, or alternatively, you have the ability to add them. So you can add people here. Just add Madeline here. We can add a role, maybe a support manager, and we have the ability to add that person there. But again, depending on how your organisation operates, you may already have application to asset mappings, and that's what you might want to bring in. Again, it can be really useful if somebody has a question with your application. They know who to go to, they know who the developers are, they know who the project manager is, or the business analyst, or maybe the agile team, that kind of thing. So again, it can really be quite useful. I think depending on your organisation, will depend on the level of detail that you may or may not want to contribute to this. Your ratings and roadmaps, again, we are looking typically at your other viewpoints here, but again, this is trying to look at, there are other videos that document and discuss how ratings and roadmaps are used, so please look into those if you're interested. But this is really trying to look at, what does my application do? What does it map to? So in terms of the functional mapping, or in terms of what products is it using, or what regulation are we involved with? Again, it can be really useful. To have a conversation internally with your stakeholders, and maybe even externally as well. It just gives you that level of understanding, and again, can be used, as I mentioned earlier, with your data flows. Can really be used to understand if you have 30% of your applications that are all doing trade reporting within your firm. Is that a problem? Is there a reason for it? Is it a location reason? Is it a regulatory reason? But again, it can give you that power to start asking those questions. And again, you can look across product and regulation. Obviously, it's application, and this test environment is being used for BCBS 239 reporting. So again, if you start seeing the application is being used for multiple regulatory asks, then you can start asking the question: do we think the data is valid for this? Do we believe it? Do we understand it? And again, it gives you that whole ability. Surveys is very much looking at again data around the application and the life cycle, and maybe around the governance models. Again, it will depend upon your organisation. Again, there are a number of videos within FINOS on the Waltz site for this, so I won't go into this too much. But again, it can really give you that level of information which can drive your survey information as a governance model across your organisation. Technology is very much looking at your operating systems, your servers. You may have your open source software in here. You may have databases. Again, it just really gives you that view of what's the kit that you're using. Are the life cycles running out? Do we need to worry about end of life? And then again, your environments that have been set up. So again, it really starts giving you that sort of view, obviously depending on your organisation and how they operate. But again, if this information can be sourced from a reliable, authoritative source, then obviously it's going to make your life much easier to understand. For instance, if we look at servers, maybe we look at cloud usage, again, it would start giving us a view of those. And I guess lastly but not least at all, is very much the changes log. This is a really useful piece. I mean, obviously this can give you all of the changes that have ever happened to the application over time. Really important, really useful. Just gives us that understanding of who made the change, especially if it was a physical change by a person in Waltz. Just to really quickly talk to, so when I talked about the roll-ups that we're looking at, if I look at the CEO office, I can see the applications. If I go to look at something like indicators, I can then see whether we have open audit issues, how many are failing, how many are passing, and this is all derived from all that good information that we saw on the application lens. I think we took the SDLC technology, so we've got 41 apps as compliant, 27 not. Again, depending on your part of the organisation or your level of hierarchy, again, it gives you that really useful view to start a conversation. And again, sort of attestations and historic, those sort of recertifications, we can start really to look at, logical flows, or maybe it might be process or the function. When was this last attested? Who last attested this? And again, we can look at things like the life cycle phase of your applications, but from different, maybe it's the CTO office, maybe it's the CIO office. Again, it gives you your view on your applications to understand things around maybe it's the application attestation health and how long ago we've done this. Maybe it's again looking at things like indicators and the SDLC technology, as we've called it in here. Or again, another real useful sort of lens can be, we can look at our applications within the CIO office of 24 apps, and we can start saying, okay, so what are we doing across these, so that we can see applications that are doing balanced services, explains more balanced services. So we can really start to drill in and we start asking questions around this. The reporting function is and the reporting grid is very useful. I know David has done a number of videos on this, so I won't talk about it in detail, but that is something very useful in terms of Waltz MI reporting and reporting from Waltz. Recommend you watch David's videos if that's something that's interesting to you. So maybe you're interested, because again, there's a lot of capability there within Waltz. Appreciate maybe this is one of my longer videos, but hopefully it's useful. Obviously, within the description of this video, I will also obviously link through to the other videos that we have within the Waltz YouTube pages, as well as the FINOS pages. Obviously, David and Jessica have contributed to. So again, there's a wealth of information there which will allow you to really drill into certain elements of what the Waltz platform can offer and can do for you, and how you might functionally make those changes. So this is merely meant as a view, just to let you see what Waltz can do, and then hopefully those other videos will give you the ability to, things that are of interest to you, to really sort of drill into and understand more. So really hope that's been useful. So any comments, obviously contact the Waltz team via the FINOS channels or via the GitHub page, and obviously people will be in contact with you. Thank you very much.